Oh, come on, man. You can do better than that. Smack your goddamn daddy.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere, where we dive into TV shows and films that are published on Tubi. We'll explore the good, the bad, and find all the lessons in between. I'm your host, Manji, and for today's episode, we are going to be diving into Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Now, if you missed the previous episode, I do think you should check it out. We dived into the anthology series Tales, which was created by Irv Gotti. So let's go ahead and dive into To Wong Foo. Now, this film originally came out in 1995, and it's about 2 hours long, just a little bit under 2 hours. And the film starts with Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes. We see them getting into drag. So we see them doing their hair, putting on makeup, putting on the costumes, and they are getting ready for a contest that is taking place in New York City because that's where they start. And so the first couple minutes of the film, we see everyone who's participating in this contest putting on their best performance. And in the end, Wesley Snipes and Patrick Swayze characters ended up winning. Now, for the record, Wesley Snipes' character name is Noxzema, while Patrick Swayze, his character name is Vita. So Noxzema and Vita, they officially won this drag queen contest in which they was awarded a free trip to Hollywood, California, so they can participate in a contest that's going to be taking place there in like a month, I believe, or like in a week or in some time. So of course, Noxzema and Vita, they're feeling on top of the world, and on their way home, they are like taking the stairs up to their apartment, and they see a little Latin person crying on the stairs. Obviously, they just came from the drag show as well. And here we kind of get like a little taste of their character. So Vita, she's more like the motherly type of person, while Noxzema is more of a pull your own self up from your bootstraps. So again, they see this person on the stairs crying, and Noxzema just wanted to, walk around them, act like they didn't even see them. But Vita stopped and spoke to them and wanted to see why they were crying. So we eventually learned that this person name is Chi Chi. Chi Chi is crying because they feel like a loser. All of this emotion came from losing the drag queen contest that Noxzema and Vita just won. So this was definitely taking a toll on Chi Chi. So she just felt very defeated and just wanted to win something for once in her life. So she was just throwing herself a pity party while Vita was trying to comfort her, basically help her change her perspective on herself, while Noxzema just really didn't give a fuck. She was just sitting there letting Vita talk and do her thing. So they eventually go to their apartment because Noxzema was getting a little nasty with Chi Chi, while Vita was just trying to create space for her to feel better and to kind of see what Chi Chi sees in them within herself. So while they're in their room, Vita has an idea that she shares with Noxzema, and that is to bring Chi Chi along with them for their trip. So originally they were awarded plane tickets so they can fly out to Hollywood, but Vita is thinking maybe they could sell those tickets, get a car, and that way Chi Chi can join them for the trip and they can just drive from New York City to Hollywood, California. Of course, Noxzema was like, hell no. But, she was listening. And then Vita eventually reminded Noxzema where she came from because she's like, hey, what I see out there in Chi Chi is basically what I seen when I first saw you. So Vita kind of just reminded Noxzema that they all kind of have the same dream and goals, and they can all achieve it if they help each other. That's essentially what she said. Definitely not verbatim. In the next scene, they are at a celebratory dinner. Of course, Chi Chi is there along with Noxzema and Vita. We also meet John, played by Robin Williams, who I guess is like in charge of the winnings. So they're trying to figure out what is going to be the best route to take to LA, because Vita also shared with Chi Chi and John that they plan to take Chi Chi with them. So they're trying to figure out the best method. And they decided to just rent a car. While John, I'm sorry, gave them a card to go get a car from a dealership that he was affiliated with so they can get a good deal. And they did just that. So while they're discussing and figuring out the best method to get to Hollywood, now that Chi Chi is going to be joining them for the ride, Vita noticed this photo behind her, and it was an autograph photo of the actress Julie Newmar, and it said, "To Wong Foo, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar." Side note. For as long as I've known about this movie, I seen this movie when I was a child. Like, it came out in 95, so I've probably seen it maybe 2000. And for the longest, I thought Tu Wong Fu was like some gay slang that I just didn't was just unaware of. I didn't realize that this entire film was named after what was signed on this photograph. Like, it just didn't click, but it clicked when I rewatched it this time around. So I thought that was hilarious. But Vita seen this photo of Julie Newmar and it's signed, and she was a fan of Julie Newmar, and she took this whole thing as a sign of that photo and Julie Newmar being there, listening in on them as a sign of good luck and just kind of like confirmation from God that what they are deciding to do is the right thing, and that's bringing Chi Chi along for the ride as well. So Vita ended up taking that photo with them because they're going to need this good luck while they drive across the freaking country. So now they're at the dealership trying to figure out what is the best car to take for their road trip. Now, the car salesman was definitely trying to get them to get this Toyota Corolla because they were like, this is the best car that's going to get you to Hollywood. However, they were set on this much more stylish car. I don't know cars like that, so I couldn't even tell you what kind it was. I just know it was like a drop top convertible. There we go. And so they were wondering, like, should we go with the more stylish car or the most sustainable car? They went with the stylish car, and I guess that could be a lesson right there is go with the sustainability rather than stylish, because who gives a fuck? Make that sustainable car stylish, like, because that's going to get you there. And even when they were getting ready to leave off the lot, the car salesman was like, there's no way you guys are going to make it to California with this car. But they didn't give a fuck. They were focused on looking fly in his vehicle, and that they were. Now it's time to head to Hollywood. And the first stop on this road trip was to Vita's hometown. It was a very small town, very hard to pronounce the name of it, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Chi Chi was like, wow, Vita, why you didn't tell us you was rich? And Vita was like, I'm not rich, like my parents are. And basically, Vita had to leave her family in the past, because had she stayed connected to her family, she wouldn't have been able to express her true self how she see fit. So basically, her family doesn't condone them doing drag. And so we see Vita pull up, and then we see her mom outside. And her mom at first was like, curious to see who it was. But then once you realize who it was, you can see like disappointment on her face. And you can see that Vita witnessed that as well. And she reacted by like throwing the map out the window and just like scurrying off. It was just like, fuck you. I'm gonna do me anyway. But shout out to Vita for choosing herself, even if that means leaving your family behind. So now, after scurrying off from her family's home, Chi Chi was like kind of freaking out because she's like, "How the fuck are we gonna get to Hollywood if you aren't gonna be using this map?" And that's when Noxzema was like, once you become a real full-fledged drag queen, you'll understand the shit that we doing. And then Chi Chi was like, what you talking about? I am a drag queen. And then Noxzema was like, you're simply a boy playing dress up, a boy in a dress.
A straight man puts on a dress and gets his sexual kicks. He is a transvestite. When a man is a woman trapped in a man's body and has a little operation, he is a transsexual. I know that. When a gay man has way too much fashion sense for one gender, he is a drag queen.
Now, this upsets Chi Chi because Chi Chi is like, I'm not just some boy in a dress. So she ends up hopping out of the car and walking away. And of course, Vita, being a Captain Save-A person, tries to, calm Chi Chi down and get her in a car. And instead of labeling her as a boy in a dress, they give her a different label, which is a drag princess. And so Chi Chi was able to live with that, and she hopped back in the car. So now Nagdima is telling her that she has to pass 4 levels in order to fully become a drag queen. And Gigi, she's just like excited. So she says like a prayer almost immediately, like, thank you, God, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then Nagdima was like, you passed the first level. And the first level was let good thoughts be your sword and shield. Now, when it comes to finding the lessons in this movie, I feel like these levels that Noxzema gave Chi Chi to conquer could be applied to everyone. Like, yes, we should all let good thoughts be our sword and shield because our thinking is literally what dictates your reality. So we could definitely live by a lot of these levels or things that Chi Chi is learning in order to become a drag queen. So now it's nighttime and they are trying to figure out where they are going to sleep for the night. It's very clear that Noxzema and Vita has had some confrontations and problems in the past when it comes to finding somewhere to sleep, like in motels and hotels. Noxzema was saying how they typically have to deal with people getting violent just because of how they look. And but Chi Chi wasn't trying to hear none of that. She's like, I'm not sleeping in a car. I need a bed. So she hopped out of that car and went right on into this hotel. And of course, Noxzema and Vita followed right after because, they were trying to protect her because they were anticipating the worst possible case, in which they did not experience that. So once they walked in, the hotel receptionist assumed that they were a part of this party that was already there. They was just like, "Oh, you ladies are here to join the party," and he just directed them to the other people, and they played games with them. They got some good food. They went swimming, and they was just like they literally just joined the party and had a ball. So that was kind of like a little learning lesson for Noxzema in particular because it basically proved what she thought, what she expected to be incorrect and gave her a different reality. So I thought that was really cool. So now they are in East Jesus nowhere, like literally in the middle of somewhere. They assumed they were in West Virginia, but they were not. And eventually they get pulled over by a cop. Vita's a little bit scared, mainly because they are in drag. And once she pulls out the license, it's going to say that her name is Eugene, which was funny. Eugene. That's such an old name. Yeah, so she wanted to avoid whatever problems could come with the police officer judging her and just turning that into a terrible situation. So once the police approached the car, of course, they asked for the license and registration. And Vita was just trying to sweet talk the police officer, in which it was working. The police officer was kind of judging Vita simply for being there with a black person and Hispanic person. So yeah, the cop was very racist. They are in a small racist town, so now that is clear. The police officer pulls or forces Vita to get out of the car, and she was like, "Well, he was like, bring your license and stuff, and you can meet me at the police car." So they go back to the police car, and by then, the police didn't give a fuck about the license. He was too busy trying to be a predator, a creep, and take advantage of this moment with Vita. So he picks up Vita, put her on the car, and tries to kiss her. Eventually, he put his hands behind or in the middle of Vita's legs, feeling a penis and some bowels. And so that freaked him out. But also, Vita was protecting herself and she pushed the cop up off of him. Of her, sorry. So then the cop falls and he like passed out and he's just laid out there. So now all the girls are freaking out because now they just think that they just killed a cop. Even Chi Chi went to check the pulse of the cop and she's like, I think he's dead. So now they just freaking out. Now they thinking that they killed a cop. So they hopped in a car and they just took off. So they ended up stopping at like this hotel. I think they just went in there to freshen up or something because they didn't stay the full night because they went back out to the car and that's when they learned that the car is no longer working. It won't start up at all. Now, during this time, they are definitely arguing amongst each other because Noxzema started blaming Chi Chi. She's like, if we never invited Chi Chi, we would have been on a plane and been at our destination, not dealing with any of this. While Chi Chi is like, did I ask you motherfuckers to bring me along? Like, you offered this. And now that kind of made Vita feel some type of way because Vita's like, I've been going above and beyond for you. And this is like the things I get, which I feel can be a lesson because I feel like I used to kind of be like that in a sense where you offer up something because you want to help someone, but you feel like they don't appreciate it enough. So now you get offended and feel like they like took advantage of you when reality you actually offered it. They didn't ask for anything. And an old friend said something to me a while ago and it stuck with me. And I feel like that is the lesson. And that is if anybody's do anything for you, it's out of the kindness of their heart. It doesn't mean that you owe them anything. So if we take that and apply it to the situation, Vita should have been doing that simply because she wanted to, regardless if Chi Chi is appreciative of it or not. you doing it because you want to. So the fact that she, is offended by, Chi Chi saying the things that she is saying, then that shows that this was more of a self-fulfilling thing for Vita rather than actually trying to look out for Chi Chi. But yeah, that can get real deep. But yeah, I think that's a lesson right there. So Chi Chi eventually was like, look, as soon as we make it to the next town, I'm taking my ass back to New York City. And so she was trying to figure out a way so she could get back home. So she walked out to see if she could get someone to help them with their vehicle. And so while she was out trying with her thumb out trying to hitch a ride, she did find a nice gentleman who came and picked her up and brought her back to the vehicle with Noxzema and Vita, in which he just ended up taking all three of them to Snyderville. So that's where he's from, a very small town in which the game plan is to get the mechanic in town to tow the car over. And then basically in the morning, they're going to figure out what needs to be done about the car. Also, just want to note that before Chi Chi went out to get that ride, Vita did ask for help from her guide, Julie Newmar. And I just feel like that's important because the freaking film was named after the signage on this photograph. So, yeah. So now it's the next morning, and the girls, they go out and they meet the entire town. So it's not a lot. I know I said entire, make it seem like there's hundreds and hundreds of people, but it's probably like a max of 25 people in this small town. And which they learn that since this is, I think it was a Cadillac, they didn't have the Cadillac part that was needed in order to fix the vehicle. So they have to wait until Monday. So they have to wait 2 days in order for the part to come in. Then they fix it and then they'll be good to go. So until then, they are welcome to stay there in town, in which they are only sharing one room in Carol Ann's house. So now they're thinking to just get comfortable, make the best out of this situation, which I appreciated. So immediately they went back to their room and they just spruced it up. Like they put like fabrics, they just turned this degular room into just a fabulous space. While they were doing this, we have the whole town watching through the window, and they are just in awe because it's safe to say they've never seen anything like this. Let alone it's unclear if they are aware that that they are drag queens. However, just the fact that they are a diverse group and just very fabulously dressed, like this is a very basic ass community that they're in. In the next scene, we see the police officer that they pushed the night before, in which his coworkers came out to assist him. They wake him up. Thankfully, he is not dead. Yeah, so they woke him up and trying to figure out what the fuck happened to him. Then we are back to Snydersville, and we see one of the girls literally giving the rundown on everyone in town. She's giving the rundown to Chi Chi, Noxzema, and Vita, of course. And then in the next scene, we are back at the police station because his coworkers is really trying to understand what is going on. Like he said he was attacked, yet they found a woman's shoe. So now they're giggling at the fact that he was beat up by a woman. But then he's like, no, it wasn't a woman. It was men dressed as a woman. And so they are all just tickled by it all and don't necessarily care to like actually help out with the situation because it's just too funny. And so while the detective is getting upset, he's like, you know what? Like, I will handle this on my own. You guys do not have to help me. I'll figure it out. And they just laughing harder and harder. So I thought that was funny. So now we see Chi Chi just kind of out walking, exploring the town. And then two guys just kind of approach her. Now, Chi Chi, she's definitely like the flirty type. But it was also very clear that she was uncomfortable because I think any woman or woman presenting who's approached by two guys in the manner that she was would be nervous or even scared because eventually more of the boys from the town joined her, and I think she was like surrounded by like 4 or 5 of these men. Thankfully, the guy who I believe his name was Bobby Ray, who initially took them to the town that picked them up from the hotel, pulled up and seen that she was in trouble and then basically saved her. So now she's just like falling in love with Bobby Ray right now. So now they're all kind of just doing their own thing in this town. So we know that Chi Chi is out with the boy who just saved her from this group of other boys. And Noxzema, she started following one of the older women there. Noxzema was told that she could barely hear. And so she was watching her and realized that she dropped a photo. So Noxzema went after her to pick up the photo. And so she's just been trying to give her this photo, but the lady is not acknowledging her at all. So every time she's like yelling, the lady just keeps walking. So basically, Noxzema is chasing her and eventually joins her at her home, finally gives her the photo, and then she just began talking her ear off. Like Noxzema just started yapping. Now, Vita, she's back at Carol Ann's house, and this is where they are staying. They're staying in one room in this whole house, in which, just based on how Carol Ann is reacting, it's pretty clear that there's some sort of abuse that's going on. So Vita thought she was helping out by spicing up the food a little bit. Like she tasted some of the sauce, realized that it lacked a lot of seasoning. So she took it upon herself to add some on there. Carol Ann started freaking out and was like, no, he doesn't like when it's spicy, referring to her husband, Virgil. So yeah. And then also Vita noticed that there was like a mark on Carol Ann's face as well. So Carol Ann gave her the excuse that some of the boxes fell from the pantry while she was trying to get something out. But Vita made it very clear that she is not in there cutting onions. That's not the reason why she's crying, and that the boxes aren't the reason for the bruise on her face. And she made it very clear that she understands that she's in an abusive relationship. Now, Bobby Ray, who's out with Chi Chi, he takes her to this like billboard poster, and this was just so cute. It was like an ad for Coca-Cola, and the ad said like "Just Love Coke," but he crossed out Coke and put Chi Chi. And of course, she was just so appreciative of it. I was appreciative of it too. Like that was just so adorable. So you can tell that Chi Chi and both Bobby Ray are definitely starting to feel a little bit, or feel a lot more intense about each other. Now back to Noxzema, where she's still just yapping off this lady's ears. Now she's at the point where she's listing off Dorothy Dandridge's movies, and she couldn't remember one of the films in which the older woman answered it for her. So that's when she realized, like, hey, this woman can hear and she can speak as well. So they had a cute little bonding moment there. So now we're back at Carol Ann's in the kitchen, and we see Virgil up in there. He's obviously drinking, and he's at the pot in which he tastes the food. And of course, he gets upset because he says it's too spicy. And he yells at Carol Ann, and he, like, Loki just like scares her because he was like, you want to make me upset, you want to make me hurt you. And then he like flinches at her and then kind of like chuckles and walks off and be like, and he was just like, take the spices out of the food. Like, what a bully. Now, Noxzema and Vita, they are hanging out with the other ladies of the town, and they learned that there's going to be a strawberry social. Now, it's not, it sounds like it's something that's going to be extravagant, but it's very small because, again, this is a very small town. And the most exciting thing about this strawberry social is the strawberry pie contest. That wasn't very impressive for Vita and them. So they were trying to come up with a theme, in which I think the theme was like wild and red. But then they learned that there's a beauty salon in town. So they took all the girls over there, did their hair and makeup, had them all looking fabulous. Then they found like the local boutique shop. It was like, I'm not sure if it's a thrift store or not, but they found it. And like the worker here, he had like a little stutter, but Noxzema, this is her forte, you can tell. So she went up in there, and she even went upstairs to the area that wasn't supposed to allow, where customers weren't allowed. And she found like a whole bunch of vintage like pieces from the 60s. Long story short, it was the kid's grandmother. No one ever bought it, so he hid it up there, but this was like the jackpot for Noxzema and them. So they ended up putting on like a little show for the town because they was looking good. They had on these fly fits, the hair was done, the makeup, everyone was just looking beautiful and having a good time. And while they were out showing off their new looks, we see Vita inside with the kid with the stutter. And Vita suggested that he read this book that was one of her favorites. And later on, we see him reading it. And while he's reading it, his stutter practically just disappears. And I thought that was cool. So, like, Vita is taking it upon herself to kind of help where she feel she can, regardless if the people ask for it or not. And while all this is happening, the police officer is definitely going around town to town. He's not giving up on finding Vita. He wants Vita. So we see him going around with like a photo, a drawn photo of Vita. And then in another scene, while these beautiful women were walking, the same guys who cornered Chi Chi earlier is now catcalling them because they ain't never seen they ain't never seen them done out like that before. Not saying that that's okay, but that's what triggered the catcalling. And Noxzema was kind of fed up with these guys. And so as she was walking over to them, they were catcalling her. She ended up having to rough up one of them and essentially taught these men, boys, how to speak to a lady. And from then on, they didn't have to be told anything else because they were respectful moving forward. So now we have all the girls. We have Noxzema, Vita, Chi Chi hanging out with all the other women in town here. And Chi Chi is just like glowing because she's so in love. And then we have Bobby Lee, who's I believe is Carol Ann's daughter. So she's like a little teenager. She's also has like a crush on someone, and they're kind of like bonding over that. Then eventually, Bobby Ray, the boy who Chi Chi went out with earlier, came up with some flowers. So we see both Chi Chi and Bobby Lee light up because they both kind of hope that he is there for them, in which we learn that he is there for Chi Chi. And we can see that, I'm just call her Lee. We can see that Bobby Lee is very upset by it. And even Vita noticed it as well. So she kind of suggested later on to Chi Chi that it will be best for her to kind of just let Bobby Lee have it. Like, one, Bobby Ray don't even know the true Chi Chi. Like he's unaware that Chi Chi's a drag queen. And also there's probably like an age difference there. They didn't mention it, but I feel like it's safe to assume that considering how young Bobby Lee was. So there's that. And she basically, Vita insinuated that Chi Chi isn't going to do anything but break this little boy's heart. So let him go be with Bobby Lee because that's just more appropriate. But Chi Chi doesn't want to hear that shit. She thinks that Vita and Noxzema are simply just being haters and she just wants to experience love. So she is going to take her own advice and give Noxzema and Vita also a piece of her mind. Now, while Vita and Chi Chi are arguing, Vita still is able to hear a lot of commotion coming from the other room, in which she knew that Virgil was whooping on Carol Ann. And in that moment, she was just like, I gotta stand up. I can't sit around and just have this happen. Like, I mean, yeah, like even Noxzema, she was like, don't hop into other people's business. And that was one of the things that Chi Chi was calling her out on, basically how she has like a colonizer mindset, because she's just forcing her help onto people who didn't ask for it. So Chi Chi definitely did call her out on it. So this was them kind of reiterating that to her, like, no, don't go help, like that's none of your business. But I'm happy Vita didn't listen because Carol Ann did need that help because Virgil was up in there whooping her ass and she just had no protection because everyone else is taking that advice and not helping or doing anything about it and just let this woman get whooped on. Vita goes in there with Virgil and Carolyn, and at first they were scared for Vita, not Noxzema and Chi Chi. They already knew Vita was going to handle it, but the other women, they were kind of scared because they thought Virgil was just going to beat up Vita, but Vita ended up whooping his ass to the point where she literally just tossed him out of the home. And I'm just like, go Vita. So after Vita whooped Virgil's ass, Carol Ann was actually very appreciative. Like she brought out the wine and was kind of having like a little chit chat with the girls, and she was just super thankful for Vita for standing up for her and protecting her. And while this was going down, Chi Chi snuck out so she could go see Bobby Ray because she is just so in love. And while she was out there with them, Bobby Ray kept reiterating the importance of just being extremely honest with your partner. And so, since Chi Chi probably didn't have any intention on telling him that he's dragged, she understood that she couldn't fully be honest with Bobby Ray and that Vita was right. She should probably step away and let the Bobbies be together, Bobby Lee and Bobby Ray. So we see Chi Chi go back inside. We don't see her in things with Bobby Ray, but it's safe to assume that she did based on how she handled going inside the house, in which we see the women. We see Carolyn, we see Noxzema, we see Vita, we also see Bobby Lee. And Bobby Lee is looking sad because the only person she's ever had a crush on is crushing on Chi Chi, who just came to this town But Chi Chi was just like, hey, I actually don't want anything to do with Bobby Ray. So, Bobby Lee, if you want to pursue him, I think you should. And everyone is kind of just thankful that Chi Chi did that and kind of seen the growth on Chi Chi for doing that. So after Chi Chi lets Bobby Lee and everyone else knows that she's not going to pursue Bobby Ray, Vita lets her know that she passed level 3, which is abide by the rules of love. Now, I know you're thinking, like, we only covered one level. I forgot to mention the other second level that Chi Chi has passed. And that was when Noxzema and Vita, they were freaking out about going into the hotel because they thought they were going to walk into some trouble. But then Chi Chi was like, fuck all that. But then the guy thought that they were part of the party there. So when Chi Chi did that, Vita and Noxzema said she passed level 2, and that was ignore adversity. So after Vita informs Chi Chi that she passed level 3, they are all lovey-dovey again, and then they apologize to each other about the horrible things that they were saying to each other, because they got out of pocket with those insults. So I'm happy that they were able to make up still. And then the focus went to the Bobbies. So they all decided to give Bobby Lee a makeover. They got her hair did, the makeup, as well as a beautiful dress. And then they encouraged her to go out to go see where Bobby Ray is at and to, approach him that night. And she did. And she was trying to be all nonchalant or whatever. But Bobby Ray, he was super impressed by the way Bobby Lee looked. But when Bobby Ray called her Bobby Lee, she was like, it's Roberta. So I'm gonna call her Roberta because I'm kind of getting confused with all the Bobbies anyway. So Bobby Ray was like, Roberta, you look fucking fine as shit. I'm just kidding. But he was very impressed with the way Roberta looked. And eventually they ended up dancing because some music was playing. And then you just see all the people, everyone who ever had like a crush on someone in this town, they took this opportunity to act on it. So we see everybody coming together and just dancing. And then we see Noxzema, Vita, and Chi Chi on the balcony just overlooking them. This beautiful moment, and they eventually ended up dancing and joining in on it too, because it's just so much love going around. So now in the next scene, we see the police officer. He's at a bar now, and he's kind of just going on a tangent, venting about these 3 women who he's been looking for. But eventually, it kind of sounds like he's just gay and he's just admiring all the masculine traits of a man. But eventually, because Vita threw his ass out, Virgil ended up joining him at the bar. They didn't know each other. Virgil just happened to go to this empty seat right here and asked him about the shoe. So now we get to the next scene, and Carol Ann is at the car with Vita, in which we learn that the car is just about ready to go. But Carol Ann wants the girls to stay for the strawberry social that's happening that evening because she just fell in love with them and she just loved them so much. And although she know they are ready to go, she hopes that they could stay just for a little bit longer. And you can tell that Vita wanted to use this opportunity to like kind of come clean with Carol Ann, and basically tell her that she's in drag. But Carol Ann stopped her before she can say anything. And she was like, men have Adam's apples. I noticed you guys is Adam's apples the day you arrived. However, that didn't mean anything. You're just my lady friend with an Adam's apple. And honestly, I think that is probably my favorite thing of this entire film is that, like, these are drag queens. They are presenting themselves in the way that they see fit, in which they are in this very small town, which I feel like people would be more like Noxzema and assume the worst that will happen by coming to this town. But instead, you're just simply being treated based on how you're presenting yourself. So that was my favorite thing about this. Like, aside from the cop projecting being a predator onto them, the cop was the only one who like really had a problem with it and kind of like labeled it and pointed it out, while everyone else just again treated the people how they presented themselves. And I feel like that's literally how the world should be, regardless of your opinion. If someone else is presenting themselves this way or actually verbally like informs you on how they want to be acknowledge, then just follow suit. Like, who gives a fuck? That's not your life. This is their life, and this is how they want to be approached. So like, if 1 plus 1 is 2, like, to me, this is how simple it is. But that Again, this is my favorite part of the entire film. So now in the next scene, we see this cop pulling up. So it's safe to assume that Virgil and him did the math and figured out that Vita Nim was here in town in Snydersville. So we see the cop pulling up. He's on the megaphone, like telling the drag queens to come out. We know you're there. Now, they are Vita, Noxzema, and Chi Chi. They are hiding in the room. Now, we already watched the film because, like, watching it back, it took me a minute to realize that they were actually hiding the whole time because we see a woman come out in all red with a veil on. So, being the viewer, I assumed that that was Vita. But by the time she made it to the cops, she lifted the veil and we see it was actually Carol Ann. So then we literally have all the women in town, all of them looking fabulous, of course. They're walking up to the cop trying to claim the shoe. Even the men, actually, everybody in town, they was like, I'm the drag queen. Like, that's me. Kind of like what happened on Life with Bernie Mac and the baby. So basically, that's what happened here. We had this entire town stood up for these people.
You're a drag queen?
Nothing this pretty could be real.
You want to touch my boa?
That's my shoe. 10.5 feet. Boy,
Give me a kiss, big boy. That makes me the drag king. Hell, I'm a drag queen too.
Who, again, they were expecting the worst to happen, which is why they were hiding out in the room. So once they realized that these people are actually standing up for them, you can tell, like, it changed a lot for them, changed their perspective on the world and just on people, gave them a different perspective on people in general. Another thing I want to note too is like Vita helping Carol Ann kind of gave her like a silent power. Like, there wasn't much conversation, at least we didn't see, between Vita and Carol Ann when it comes to like her needing to not deal with that. Besides like those short two interactions in the kitchen, we know that that was Carol Ann in the red with the red veil, in which she goes up to Virgil and she just stands in front of them and just looks at him. And that was intimidating enough for him because he never seen her embody that much power. She didn't have to say a fucking word. She just looked at him. And this man got in that fucking car and took off because he didn't even want to test this new Carol Ann. And I love that as well. So again, after Vita and them realized that the town was actually standing up for them, that kind of inspired them to stand up for themselves in their own life. Although I would argue that them being themselves is standing up for themselves in more ways than they realize. But for Vita, she wants to kind of confront her parents, and with Chi Chi, she's like, I'm gonna take finding love seriously and stuff. So this was really cute to see them just being inspired by this town standing up for them. So of course the girls have to join them for the party. This is their last evening here, and it's also the Strawberry Social. So everyone is out in red, looking fabulous and just enjoying the night. So now the next morning, I believe, we see the girls saying their goodbyes to everyone in town, and everyone is missing them. Like even the crew of dudes who were like predatory at first, by the end of this film, they were like respectful young men. Shout out to Noxzema for getting them in check. But we see them even like feeling sad. So everyone just grew to love these three. So it was like a bittersweet moment. And we are back with Carol Ann and Vita, in which Vita was like, come with us to Hollywood. But Carol Ann is like, I appreciate it. However, I got two baby girls to look after, so she got to stay in town. But thankfully, she got that new power. So I felt like, I know this is like all hypothetical because it's not like a real story, but I feel like Carol Ann definitely could handle herself moving forward because of that because Vita just simply stood up for her in that one moment. It reminded her just how powerful she is. Vita, she ends up gifting Carol Ann that photo of Julie Newmar. And Carol Ann already knew who she was too, surprisingly, to Vita. And so I thought that was a nice little gift, kind of passing the good luck torch. And then, they make their way to Hollywood. And also surprisingly, they made it in time for the Hollywood Drag Queen contest, in which my girl Chi Chi ended up winning. And I need to take a moment for Chi Chi's look. Fabulous hair, dress, makeup, eight, eight, eight all across. And the person who is crowning the winner of this contest is fucking Julie Newmar. Like this was a whole full circle moment, and the fact that it was Chi Chi, the one being crowned by Julie Newmar, who Vida was obsessed with. It was just a full circle moment. I almost dropped like a couple thug tears because it was just so beautiful to see. And like now she's a true drag queen and nobody can tell her otherwise. Well, no one could truly tell her otherwise before then. And that basically is the end of To Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Now, I don't have one grand lesson for the end of this film because I feel like I've shared at least three, not to mention, those level ups. Those are all lessons as well. I learned a lot by watching this, and I also did some just like self reflecting as well while watching this. But the true takeaway is to not let anyone decide who you are. You get to decide that, and you get to present yourself to the world who you are. And shout out to everyone who does that, regardless of the backlash they may get. Like, you give other people the courage to do the same. So, shout out to y'all. And so, for the next podcast episode, we are actually going to dive into Paradise Records. That was created by that one biracial rapper, not Drake, the other one. But we're going to watch that next time. And if you made it this far, that means you kind of fuck with your girl. So I think you should go ahead and give me a follow, like this video, share it with a friend. Happy Pride to everyone. And I'll see y'all next week.